became aware that there is a local person overseeing their elections. But elections are only a piece of the work that you do, although a big piece, and we'll get more to that later. But can you walk us through your everyday roles and responsibilities as the city's city clerk?
Sure. So every day's a little bit different. I think everybody who sits in the seat will say my day is different every day. However, the city clerk's position, probably my most visible spot is working with the mayor and the city commission. So if you're watching those city commission meetings, if you look to the mayor's right, I'm usually sitting next to her, assisting her through the meetings. Our staff works closely with the executive office, the city manager's office, in the preparation of the city commission meetings. And then when the city commission meeting is over, our kind of the city manager's office takes it up until city commission day, and then after city commission day, we take it from there to do the official proceedings and the archiving and all the stuff that has to go on after a city commission meeting. But my role there is to assist the mayor during the meeting, make sure we're working through our standing rules and Robert's Rules of Order, and then I run the 3-minute clock. So during the public comment time, and you see that 3-minute clock, that I get to, every 3 minutes I get to push that little button. And then other things that we do in the office, the clerk's office is a staff of 11, including myself. And so we're doing those official proceedings. We're also a passport agent, so you can get your, we're a passport agent, so we can work through, help you with your, doing your passports if you're gonna go traveling. So you can fill out your paperwork, we help you make sure it's all done properly, and then we send that to the Department of State on your behalf. We have a bunch of notary publics, so if you need to get something notarized, you can come to our office and do that as well. We also are in charge of business licensing, so we don't license every business in the city, but select ones that may have some public safety type things that go with it. Think of liquor licenses. The hot new thing is cannabis, so we've learned a lot about cannabis over the last few years, so we license those. Food trucks, food carts, indoor assemblies. So think of wedding venues, a movie theater, those type of things. And then the one pedal pub that we have as well.
Oh, cool. So basically, if you want to start a business in Grand Rapids, they'll eventually talk with you or someone.
Potentially, it depends on what the business is.
Okay. But if you might need a license.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, and I know you want to talk about archives a little bit later, but we have 2 staff members who work at the community archives.
Cool. Well, we can get right back into this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the City Archives and Record Center is and what people can get out of it?
Yeah, so it's really a full community archives center. It's a great collaboration between the Grand Rapids Public Museum, City of Grand Rapids, and Kent County. And so there's different parts in the floor. It's over by the old museum there, and it's now attached. Now there's the new museum school attached to it. So you have the Grand Rapids Public Museum has a couple floors in there with a lot of their collection that you don't see at the museum. They have it behind the scenes, so that's kind of fun to see sometimes. And then we also have all of the city archives going back to when the city was a village before 1850 when it became a city. We have all those hand written minutes. The clerks in those days had much better handwriting than I have. I'm so glad that we work in a digital or a word processing day and age instead of the handwritten minutes. But some of those minutes are just immaculate handwriting, and a lot of those documents we have to wear cloth gloves in order to touch them because they're so fragile. And we've been working on updating those records into a searchable, so typing them up or keyboarding them in, sorry. But getting them so that they can be searchable so we can find that information without having to touch the documents over and over again. A lot of other property records there, old tax records. So there's a lot there. The county archives are there as well. And then we also do GRPS as archives as well.
So would that only be for public buildings? Like if I wanted to look up the history of my house in Heritage Hill, could I find it?
No, we have those too. So we have being that your house is assessed a property value, so we have to assess, the city assesses those properties, and so we have those old property cards too. As they change hands, and some of those Heritage Hill houses obviously went from a single family home into most of them are multi-family homes, and lot of the, and then of course there's the building records before, when did the first floor get divided into 2 apartments, and when did the second floor become, and some of the history. So there's some amazing things when you look at some of these old property records of what they looked like when they were single family homes and then into what they are currently now.
Very cool. I've always wanted to see what
And some of
looked
them
like.
switch back too.
Yeah.
So
can members of the public go into that CARC, is that
yes, the Clerk.
the Clerk?
Yeah.
Can members of the public just walk in, or is it appointment only?
We like to do appointments because we want to make sure that we can provide you the best service. It'll always locked, but there's a push button there, and we have staff members there. But it works better on appointment, and our staff is really good at working with folks that are doing any research, if they're doing some family research, if they're doing some property research. Obviously, we do a lot with the Grand Rapids Historical Society, and we do in programs with them as well. Also on social media, you can follow the archives on social media. A lot of times it's kind of fun, the engagement. They'll say, we have this undated picture. When was this? And I'll tell you what, there are some like car people that are awesome. They're like, well, that's a 1952 Studebaker. Probably there's no Studebaker. I'm not a car guy, but there are car. And so they'll say, all right, car people, we don't know when this picture was taken. And then other people are like really into signs, and they're like, well, that was Woolworth's, 20th anniversary sign, and the Christmas trees are up, so we know it's between this. So it's amazing when we can take an undated picture, and the people that just like engage into this process. So we have obviously social media. We also have things where we're trying to put a lot of things online where you can search for things as well. And I think we're going to see more and more opportunities that we can put things online and people can search them themselves.
One thing that I found really interesting about that, as a journalist who's often writing FOIA requests or Freedom of Information Act requests, sometimes I do just need historical records.
Yep.
If someone was looking to do a FOIA request public documents through that law, would you recommend that they see if there is any of those records already available in the
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are available in the public domain where you don't even need the FOIA, because like your property tax records, there's a lot of records. Now income tax is going to be a little bit different because that's a little more secure with social securities and different other things, but like property records that you can search on the city's website. There's a lot of things that you can find through our website, through Kent County's website, if you're looking up like some different property things, and maybe like building permits and the like, even of like your neighbors or various others. There's a lot of stuff that you can find. So maybe it's best to go look online before you go through a potentially expensive FOIA process, because we do, if we can answer the question quickly, we will, but sometimes it does take that freedom of information request because there's some sensitive things that need to be redacted, in other law type things, and we do charge for the time and effort that it takes to provide those. So there might be just an easy way to find that one thing you're looking for.
Right, so save yourself the time and money and visit the City Archives and Records Center. Cool. We also have an election coming up that
We have 3 of them.
Yeah, we've got, it's going to be a big election year, so excited to have you here so we can pick your brain. We have something new that people are excited about. So after voters statewide voted to approve Prop 2 in 2022, voters in Grand Rapids can now vote at the booth before Election Day. Can you provide an overview of the early voting process in Grand Rapids and what that means?
Yeah, so in Grand Rapids, we're going to have early voting at 3 sites for the February election. The first one is going to be at St. Peter and Paul School. That will be in the first ward. Grand Rapids Public School University up on Fuller in the second ward, and at Ottawa Hills High School in the third ward. But any voter could go to any one of the sites. So you don't have to go to the first ward site. So let's say you live up on the west side up on the hill, and you work over by Ottawa Hills High School, you can go to Ottawa Hills High School to vote. You can go to any of the sites. We'll have ballots there. It'll be open over 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays, so it'll be starting Saturday, September 17 through February 17 through Sunday, February 25. We'll be open usually 9 to 5, except for the Tuesday and Thursday in there. We'll be open from 11 to 7. All of this is on our city website, so don't think you have to write all it down. Just go to our website. You can find that information. And what will happen is it'll be For the voter, it'll feel very much like just going to your precinct. You're going to come in, you're going to fill out a voter application, you're going to show us your photo ID. If you don't have your photo ID with you, you fill out an affidavit stating who you are on the back side of it. We'll look you up in the e-poll book computer. What will be different is we won't have all the ballots printed. So we have a ballot on demand system, so we will put in a code and it will print your ballot. So we don't have to have all this extra ballot stock laying around. So it'll print your ballot, you'll vote your ballot, and then you put it in a tabular. So it's going to be very similar to election day. What is different for this process is the e-poll book, the laptop computer will be live with security, because we want to make sure that a voter doesn't accidentally turn in their absentee ballot or do something, vote twice. So we want to make sure we're securing from someone voting twice. So as soon as someone votes early, it goes into our qualified voter file, which is the state voter file, so we will know. And then also you can't, change your address or do anything else after that day. That way we know that your vote is locked. Also at the early voting site and on your precinct now, you can bring your absentee ballot in. So it's kind of like a hybrid vote from home, vote in person type thing. So if you're on our absentee ballot list and we mail you an absentee ballot and you want to take some time to work on it at home, then you can bring your absentee ballot to the early voting site or to the precinct. What will happen though is you're gonna have to fill out an application there, because you're now switching from an absentee voter to an in-person voter. But then you go through the whole process and then you put your ballot to the table. At least you'll know if you marked it correctly. So the one unknown with absentee voting is, did I mark my ballot correct? Did I cross over an August primary? Did I vote for too many candidates? Did I do something wrong where I voted? This way you can go put it through a tabulator. The tabulator will tell you whether you voted correctly or not.
Perfect. So those 3 locations that you mentioned earlier, can you tell us how those sites were decided as early voting locations?
So we're trying to look for some other things. We're trying to find things that are convenient in each ward, and 2, that is easy for our staff to get to and manage if there's issues. So it's a little bit further out from downtown, but close enough that we can get there if there's an issue. We figured that in those corridors there's ways to get through. It's also there's some other locations we're looking for. So trying to figure this is the trying to figure out how the Venn diagram of finding the perfect site available for 9 days over weekends. So churches are harder to, we use a lot of churches for polling locations. Well, usually they have services on Saturday and Sunday. So St. Paul and Peter Church work or their school, because they don't have the school going there, but they have a gym. So it's available on the Saturdays and Sundays and the whole 9 days. And Ottawa Hills High School, and then we use a lot of schools for precincts. Well, schools have school. Well, Ottawa Hills High School isn't fully utilizing their whole space. So there's some spaces they may be using in the future, but right now their old cafeteria is not being used at all. And GRPS University doesn't have students. So there's a lot of good use that the city partners with GRPS on a lot of things, but elections is one of them. So trying to find a location with ample parking, a large space, Wi-Fi, available for 9 days over weekends and during the week. It was really tough trying to figure out what these locations are.
Yeah, I bet.
We're going to add just to look ahead, we are adding a 4th location in November because we know we'll be busy, and we'll be at DeVos Place in Exhibit Hall B. So we're going to have a large location that we can use.
Right downtown too.
Right downtown, and so plenty of parking. Again, so we just want to make sure we have that 4th location.
Okay, great. Well, it is about time for our first break now. When we come back, we'll talk more with Joel Hondorp, the Grand Rapids City Clerk.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection. If you're just now tuning in, I'm Allison Donahue, and in this segment, I will be speaking with Joel Hondorp, the Grand Rapids City Clerk. Remember, we're streaming live at therapidian.org and on GRTV's Facebook page. You can also catch rebroadcasts of the show throughout January on cable GRTV's Channel 25. Welcome back to the show, Joel. Thanks for sticking around for the next couple questions. So we were talking about early voting before we cut to the break. I wanted to ask, before we switch topics again here, but to more election questions, of course. With early voting, are there specific groups or communities or demographics that tend to benefit more from early voting? Is it an accessibility reason that we're offering this year?
Well, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for, we're just giving more convenience for voters. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of opportunities. When the voters passed Proposal 3 of 2018, going to no reason absentee, that really changed a lot of things, because before then you had to have a reason in order to vote absentee. And it's going to be the same thing with early voting. What is the convenience, or what was hindering you from able to get to the polling place? So when we had those reasons why, one of them wasn't I work 12-hour shifts, so I'm not available to get to the precinct. It was I expect to be absent. Well, if I'm working a 12-hour shift in my community, well, then I really didn't. It was really tough. And so we saw obviously a large increase in absentee voting after 2018. And I think the same thing is going to happen with early voting. We don't have any data here in Michigan yet to let us know what's going to happen. I've been talking to some county clerks around the country that trying to figure out what their turnouts were, and it looks like it's about a one-third, one-third, one-third. One-third voting early vote, one-third voting absentee, and one-third going to the polling location on election day. So there's a lot of different options there. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen yet with the data, but I think it's going to be if someone has time they want some time to be able to fill out the ballot, they don't feel rushed. They have all these different times to do it. Maybe out of town, travel for work over the week, but you want to actually put your ballot through a tabulator. I think that's going to be the demographic we're looking for those that vote absentee generally and trust the system. I mean, we do count every absentee ballot that gets returned to us. You can trust the system. But if you have some doubts or really want to make sure your ballot goes through a tabulator, now you have that option to actually see your ballot go through the tabulator. And I think that's going to be the demographic that this affects the most.
And some people like to fill it out at home and then see it get checked through or
Correct.
passed through the machine, and that works too. So I know we've talked about it quite a bit. The difference between early voting and absentee ballot voting then, or absentee voting. You don't have to have a reason then for early voting either now, correct?
No, correct. You can just go in. If you're a registered voter, you can vote early. You have that option.
Perfect.
Or you can request an absentee ballot.
And they count the same, so.
They do.
Perfect. So for this election coming up next month on February 27, which is a Tuesday, what are all of the options voters have for casting their ballots again?
So this election is very confusing for voters, and we get it. But this is how it's written in state law, that a voter must choose a Republican or a Democratic ballot, or a third option if one is available. So for example, in the city of Grand Rapids, part of the city of Grand Rapids is in the Kentwood School District. Kentwood Schools has a millage vote. So if a voter is like an independent voter and doesn't adhere to either party, they can vote they can get a ballot that just has that Kentwood ballot on it. And the Republican and Democratic ballots will have that on there as well. The reason why this is a little bit different, because when we think of like an August primary, when you have both parties on there, you can just vote in one lane, one side or the other side, you just can't cross over. This one is a little bit different because what we're doing here is we're part of like 50 different presidential primaries going on. And not every state uses a primary. Some use caucuses, some use conventions. We're going to start next week, which is hard to believe, a week from today in Iowa for their caucuses. So that's only party people that are going to select sites to go vote for candidates. So remember, we're not voting for people, we're voting for allotment of delegates. So there's so much to this. And what you're going to have is, that's why you have to ask for a Republican or Democratic ballot, because you're selecting the allotment of delegates to the national conventions that happen next summer for each of the major parties. And so the question becomes, well, I'm an independent voter, I don't adhere to one of the parties. Well, you can still participate in this process. You just have to choose a Republican or Democratic ballot. And it doesn't register for any party. Michigan is not a party registered state. It does not make you a member of the Republican Party, does not make you a member of the Democratic Party. You're just making a presidential preference.
Gotcha. Perfect. So
and we've had a lot of calls. So we've had absentee applications go out and a presidential preference form for our permanent absentee ballot voters now. And they're like, well, I've never had to do this. Well, yes, you had. Over the last basically like 10 election cycles, you've had to choose a Republican or Democratic ballot.
Yeah, I was going to ask, has Michigan always handled our primary elections that way?
Yes, ever since they became a primary state. It's basically happened during the Ford presidency of the 70s, when it went from conventions and caucuses to more democratic lower D process of direct voting rather than in caucuses or conventions.
Could you give us a overview of or an update on voter turnout from the last couple of elections and what we might expect to see in this upcoming?
Usually for this February or this presidential preference primary, it's about 30% turnout compared to like a gubernatorial elections, usually like in the high 50s, and a presidential elections in the low 60% range. I think in 2016 it was 66% turnout, and in 2020 November it was 63% turnout. So yeah, you have a large range. This GRPS election we just had was about 16%.
Okay.
So it varies, but what we do see is it stays pretty steady of that turnout.
Does the city set goals for itself on voter turnout numbers?
We don't, only because we don't know how many people want to engage, what the different elections are going to be. We leave get out the vote to the parties and the candidates, and we're there just to make sure that your ballot is marked or is tabulated properly. Yeah, you get your ballot. And so our goal is to make sure that every eligible voter has the safe and secure way to cast their ballot.
Okay.
So we leave voter turnout. Now, we may work with some community partners in some other areas to make sure we get better information out, so people understand the process. And and there's a big difference in turnout between different precincts. We might have in a general November election, some precincts close to 80% and others that are like at 30%. Mm-hmm. So it has changed, but we also have people that are communities that are very mobile too. So they have moved and they haven't changed their voter registration, so they're still on the voter rolls, but they haven't voted even in their new locations.
And we have some 2024 is a little bit different for Grand Rapids because we are now voting for our mayor the same year that we vote for president.
Yes.
Can you explain why that change was made and maybe what difference it could make for voters?
Yeah, so what happened was, so we've had odd year elections for the longest time in the city of Grand Rapids. There is a law that says that cities may change it to an even year. There was a citizens group that put out, when got petitions, they made 2 charter changes. One of the charter changes was basically highly requesting the city commission to pass a resolution to move to even years, which they did, and it passed by a good margin. And the other charter change was a candidate can't get over, a city candidate cannot be automatically elected in the August primary. So in the past, if let's say you had 3 or 4 candidates and you had a primary race and you got over 50% of the vote, you're automatically elected. Mm. Now that has changed, that the top 2 vote getters in August, whether you get 50% or more or not, you move to November.
Okay.
And it all depends on if we have an August or November election as well. So if 2 candidates file for mayor, there will not be a contest on the August ballot. It goes right to November. That's what we had a lot for the city commission races last year in 2022 for commissioners.
And that's because the mayoral race is nonpartisan, so you don't necessarily need a primary election for...
Correct, because it's nonpartisan, correct.
Perfect. All right. And maybe one last question before we go to break. So I know something that's been in the news a lot is that a Supreme Court in Colorado ruled last month that President Donald Trump would not make it onto their primary ballot. I heard murmurings that they were having a similar conversation here in Michigan, but I was wondering if you could give us an update on where that landed, and will voters see Trump on the ballot next month?
So they will see him on the ballot because the ballots were delivered today, so I actually have the ballots. Nice. So in a safe and secure location.
Of course.
And so yes, Donald Trump is on the ballot in Michigan. So Secretary Benson basically said early on, she said, I have no legal right to remove any candidate from the ballot. And so the lawsuits went through and the Michigan Supreme Court said they were not going to hear the case. When I talked to her about earlier, we talked about 50 different contests. Well, there's 50 different rules on how these primaries work as well. And in Michigan, it says the Secretary of State will put on the ballot the names of candidates who are commonly being talked about in the national media. So that's, and then after she puts out her list, she gives the list to the state Republican Party, the state Democratic Party, and then they can add candidates on too. I think the Republican candidates added 1 person on, Democrats didn't add anybody else on. And then there's like 4 days afterwards, there's a portion of time after that list comes out that someone can remove themselves, and a Republican candidate remove themselves from the ballot.
Okay. So
the ballot's set now. Donald Trump is on the ballot in Michigan. And so you see all these lawsuits and stuff that are going on in other states, but they have different rules on ballot access. Some states you have to have petitions. Some states it's the Secretary of State. I'm not sure what they all are, but they're all different. So it used to be all news was local, everything was a local. Well, now we've switched how we talk about elections, because now all elections are national, because we're looking at a lens from Colorado, from Maine, from Maryland, from Texas, and we have to look at what our laws are here in Michigan.
Mm-hmm. So going national to local now.
Yes.
Puts a lot of pressure on the local election officials, but You get the job done.
That's right.
So we're heading into our second break now, but when we come back, City Clerk Joel Hondorp will be taking questions from you. To take part, send questions or comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org, tweet us at GRTV Access, or comment on the GRTV Facebook page.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm here again with City Clerk Joel Hondorp to take some more questions from viewers like you. I also want to give you one last opportunity now to, if you have one piece of advice for voters at home, maybe it's their first time voting and they're feeling nervous, or they've done it a billion times and they just want to make sure they can do it.
The rules have changed a billion times.
That's also true.
So go to michigan.gov/vote, michigan.gov/vote 3 times, michigan.gov/vote. You can see where your polling place is. You can see a sample ballot. You can apply for an absentee ballot. You can see where your absentee ballot, if we received your application, if we received your ballot. So all things you want to see, go to michigan.gov/vote.
Perfect. So you can track your ballot just like you track your packages.
Yep.
Not the same place.
That's right.
But similar style. Okay, we have questions from the public now. This first question is from a viewer named Greg. Greg asks, what is the difference between the county and city clerk?
So that's a good question. So the county clerk, we work very closely with the county clerk. The county clerk in Michigan does a lot of the vital records. So think of birth and death records, marriage licenses. They're also in Kent County is in charge of the register of deeds. So all the when you buy and sell property, all those deeds are with them as well. But we work with them with elections as well because they do all the campaign finance, and they work with all the local municipalities as far as doing programming our equipment, and they actually are the ones who purchase the ballots. So it's a little bit different for every county, but that's the combination between Kent County and the city of Grand Rapids. Clerk Lyons and I work well. We work really closely with each other and work to make sure we do it well. And Michigan's a little different. We're a home rule state, so local clerks run all elections. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Northeast states are the only states that do that. Everywhere else in the county, all elections are run by county clerks. So it's a lot different here in Michigan and Wisconsin.
That is interesting. So, okay, good to know. I wonder how that looks different in state by state.
And the county, and it's a little different because the county clerk is elected partisan in a partisan race, whereas I'm appointed. But there are some elected city clerks out there too, like the Walker and Kentwood city are elected clerks, and so I'm an appointed clerk. And East Grand Rapids is hired by the city manager. So we all have our different ways of how we come into office.
It's also interesting that isn't the same for each one. Laws are weird.
Yep.
This next question is from Tina. Tina asks, tells us, I will be turning 18 in August. Will I have time to register to vote before the November elections? Can I participate in the primary in February?
You cannot participate in the primary. Depends on when you turn 18 in August. So we have an August 6th primary. I had to think of that for a minute. August 6th primary. So if you turn 18 before August 6th, you can vote in that primary. You can register to vote now. 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register. You can register, and then your registration kind of sits in limbo until you turn 18, and automatically then your registration becomes active. Up until now, anybody who's 17 and a half can register to vote. So my daughter turns 18 on February 13. On August 13th, she went online and registered to vote. So you can register to vote now. When the law comes into effect, 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register, but up until then, anybody 17 and a half can register to vote. You just can't vote until you're 18. So register to vote, 6 months before, and you'll be all set for Election Day in November.
Perfect. And if you're pre-registering, do you do that online or?
Yeah, you'll be able to do that online. You can do it at the Secretary of State's office. You can mail us a paper form. We'll get you into the system, and it will just kind of hold your record until you hit your 18th birthday.
Good to know. This is a question from a viewer named Bo. Bo asks, my business has been growing over the past year, and I'm at a point where I need new staff to grow our capacity. Does the city offer grants or additional funding to help businesses grow? I'd love to minimize the loan I'll need from my bank.
It all depends on the business and what it is. That would be a question you could call our economic development company. So call 311 and ask for economic development, and they may be able to talk about what different options are out there. But it depends on what kind of business and what the prerequisites for some of the grants and start gardens and various things that are out there.
So 311 is a good place to start for that.
For almost anything in the city of
Right.
Grand Rapids.
Another question, does the city have any resources to make sure we are in compliance with local regulations? I don't know entirely what that question is asking, so, oh, that was part of the question that I just asked about the small business. No, it's a separate one. Getting all confused here. We'll skip it and come back to that one, because I think it's another
just quickly, I mean, we do there's lots of compliance checks on everything that we do. Obviously, we're audited, elections are audited by the state and the county, so we do election audits, and I know there's all other things that other state and federal entities will come back and audit based on whether we're assessing property properly, if we're doing income tax properly. There's other audits and checks and balances for all the different rules and regulations the city does.
Okay, so if someone does want to know, make sure that they're in compliance with local regulations.
Yeah, they can check. Depends on if it's with like a rental order. We have a whole code compliance.
Okay, perfect. So visit the website.
Yep, or call 311.
Or call 311. Okay, perfect. We got that one solved. Let's see if we can do more.
That's right.
Tanya wants to know, my family recently lost our home. We've been in a shelter for the last 2 weeks. So many places were closed over the holidays, it has been hard to find resources. Does the city have some place to get information on resources in the city?
Yeah, there's been a lot of work done with that. I mean, I hate to say 311 again, but that's going to be where to go. I know our HOT team, our homeless outreach team, has been working with folks that are unhoused at the moment, and there's other resources that are out there. We've got a lot of I hate to use a lot of acronyms, but we're for government. But ARPA funds from the federal government to work through a lot of things. So there's been a lot of resources out there, and I think the combination between the county and the city working together to provide those resources.
Cool. So maybe turn to 311 for that one too. See if there's any resources, or the HOT team, which is
The homeless outreach team.
right, and that can be accessed through the city's website.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, question from Paul. Paul asks, says, I live near the south side of Riverside Park, and it has always surprised me that there isn't a bus route down from Monroe past the downtown area. Are there any plans for the city to expand bus routes?
So the city doesn't run the bus system. It's run by a 6-city. I mean, we're part of it, but it's a 6-city authority called. Was the ITP, but most commonly known as the Rapid. And so they have their own board of directors. So you'd have to reach out to the Rapid to reach out for additional bus services.
So the city,
So you pay city residents pay tax and have a millage to the Rapid, as does Walker, Kentwood, Wyoming, East Grand Rapids, and maybe somebody else, but they're basically the 6 cities, and the mayors also, I think, sit on the board of directors, and there's other community members that sit on that board of directors.
okay, but it's not like the city commission.
Correct. It is not a city
They
department
can't
or a
help
city
you make
function.
new routes. All right. One last question, and this question is from Todd. Todd says, I live in the Creston neighborhood, and last week I noticed some construction on my street. The house doesn't really match the other houses on my block. Are there zoning regulations about this?
It all depends on the neighborhood association. Obviously, it's a little different for those that live in Heritage Hill. They know that there are historic designations and things that you have to do in order to, but it all depends on the neighborhood and what that is. So it generally no, depends on, would be the answer for most neighborhoods, unless it's a specialized neighborhood like, say, Heritage Hill.
But if you live in Creston neighborhood, you can use your local neighborhood association, which there is one in Creston, and that might be a good place to find an answer to that question. Well, thank you so much. We're about to head into another break, and when we come back, we'll be taking more questions from the community. Thank you.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
back. Here with us on City Connection is City Clerk Joel Hondorp, and we have more questions from viewers like you. Let's get into it. So our first question is coming up. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
And still enjoying yourself on the show?
It's fantastic.
Great. Okay, that's what it's all about. Our first question is from Jillian. Jillian asks, I've been commuting to GR from Kalamazoo for a year now, and I'm hoping to move into Grand Rapids. My wife and I are looking at houses in different parts of the city, but are trying to figure out if there are different tax rates for different neighborhoods. Do you know if they differ, and where I can get more information?
Not necessarily, probably not different tax rates, but every house is assessed its value. So probably depending on what the house value is in the neighborhood. So some neighborhoods are going to probably have higher values than others, and so that will be kind of looking at what is that price range. And so the multiplier won't be different. It's just what the house rate or what the house is assessed at, and that's what the property taxes would be. But you wouldn't have higher taxes based on your neighborhood. You might, although one thing, if you're like in the DDA, you may have some extra. There might be some extra there because you're in the DDA and they have different assessments.
Can you break down what the DDA is?
Sorry, the Downtown Development Authority. So yeah, if you're in that downtown area, so if you're looking at buying a condo or something that's in that downtown area, there may be some different assessments that somebody who's maybe in a traditional neighborhood might not have.
Do you have a good place to point them for more information to figure that out?
Probably to our website, or they could probably ask the assessor's office or the city treasurer's office.
Cool. This next question is from a viewer named Mike. I just got engaged. Congrats, Mike. And I'm trying to figure out all the details. Our plan is to go on our honeymoon right away. Is there a window of time we have to submit the paperwork after we're married?
I thought he was going to ask about a passport because they're going to go someplace cool for their honeymoon. That's not where I thought the question was going to go, but go get your passport. It takes if you need a passport, it does take a while for them to process. So make sure you do that as well if you're going to go someplace cool. But if you're going to Traverse City or something, then you don't need a passport. But anyway, yeah, there is a certain time frame. We don't do marriage licenses. The county clerk does, but I know there is. There's some time frame, I think it's within 10 days, I think, after the wedding that paperwork has to be back to the county clerk's office.
Okay, good to know. So that's county clerk, but if you are looking for a passport.
So accesskent.com.
Cool.
So ACCESS Kent.com is their website.
Perfect. This question is from a viewer named Allison, great name. Could you give us a brief rundown on same-day registration? What do people have to know if they're registering to vote on the same day that they're casting their ballot?
You sure you didn't put that question in
I
yourself?
know, it sounds like something I'd ask.
It does sound like something you asked, and very specific. No, same-day registration was put in with Proposal 3 of 2018. I always make sure I have the Proposal 3 of 18, Proposal 2 of 22. So Proposal 3 allowed for same-day registration. Before that, you had to be registered to vote 30 days before election, or you weren't able to participate. So now, up until 15 days before the election, you can register online. You can go to the Secretary of State's office. But in those last 14 days, so we call same-day registration is actually same day all the way up to 14 days. But as long as you are to the clerk's office by 8 o'clock or in line at 8 o'clock on election night, you can register to vote. Not only just register to vote for the first time, but also change your address. If you moved in the last year or so and you want to register to vote and change that address, there's no reason why. I mean, we have the option. The option is there. For some reason, you weren't able to do it again. But we have so many different options now that you can register to vote. Please don't wait till the last minute. Go to michigan.gov/vote and tell your friends to go there as well. Check your voter registration. Let's say, for example, you're a Grand Valley student. You're studying in Grand Rapids. You've been here since the beginning of the school year. You got the 30 days, so you have that residency. You live here. Just go make sure where you're registered to vote. You want to maybe talk with your parents or your other things. If it should not affect your financial aid. I'm not saying that it will or will not, but there are some different implications for different states and different things. So make sure you consult with a family member or something, like what will it affect, but generally it doesn't. We've seen voters then register, a couple months back at their parents' address for a different election, because now they're back home and they've been there for 30 days, so they can register back at home. So, but go to michigan.gov/vote and then make sure that where you're registered to vote.
Great. So don't wait. I know every election there's those news articles where just crazy lines at all the universities.
Yeah, but what we found out is obviously voters have choices, and there's lots of choices to do that. No one was up. So we had our last voter about 10:30 at night. I think Ann Arbor was like 2:00 in the morning. No one was upset. I mean, we were upset because we were busy working and want to get these absentee ballots to the AV counting board. But the mood was great in lines, and I heard that from the East Lansing clerk and the Ann Arbor clerk as well. Everybody was supporting each other. The community was out supporting those in line. If you're in line by 8 o'clock, you have that option, and we'll do everything. And we're working on that plan for November, especially now that we have DeVos Place available. That will hopefully get us some more voting stations.
Yeah. I know just that, especially at college campuses, they have longer lines just because students are trying to register at the same time. Our next question comes from a viewer named Elena. Elena asks, what qualifies for proof of residency? Say if someone doesn't have a driver's license.
So proof of residency, the best one is going to be if you have a photo ID with that address on that photo ID. But if you don't have that, that's okay. You can have something, basically a check stub, a bill, some kind of utility bill, something, like a bill from your college, anything like that proves that you are a resident at that house. And you don't have to have it on paper. You can show us on the phone as well.
Okay, good to know. I think we have more questions coming up here.
And Elena really knew how to ask a good question.
I know. Great question. Another question from a viewer. This one is from a viewer named Will. Can voters bring notes to the polls on ED? I'm guessing election day.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, for sure. Just don't leave them in the poll. Just don't leave them in your booth, because we do go through and we check them to make sure that like someone didn't write like on the side of it like vote for Joel or something. Some kind of note. So we check and make sure that someone doesn't leave any campaign paraphernalia there. So yeah, you can bring your notes. Please do. The last thing we want someone to do is make a mistake because they had everything written out what their plan was. We always like to say no before you go or plan your vote. And so that would be an example where you planned your vote. So yeah, please bring that notes. Just make sure you leave the notes with you. Kind of a side to that is we talk about campaigning in the polls sometimes. It's like, so you can't campaign in the polls. You can't wear campaign paraphernalia of that candidate if they're on the ballot. So can't wear red hats. For this election, or you can't say I'm with Biden, or anything that's pro a candidate. You can't wear it in the election, or a party paraphernalia as well. And no one can hand out brochures outside. They got to be 100 feet away from the door.
Okay.
So that's kind of that planning to vote too. So don't leave your campaign material like in the booth.
Right.
Our workers will go through and make sure that stuff isn't in there.
But definitely bring notes if you planned ahead of time.
That's right. That's the biggest thing. There's so many different ways to research things now.
Yeah. And research your candidates too. It's good to make informed decisions when voting. Another vote is, can you explain surrender, or another question.
Yeah.
We're talking about one thing.
That's right.
It's confusing me. Can you explain surrendering your absentee voter ballot?
Yeah, so this isn't as much as a thing as it has been. So in the past, if you brought your absentee ballot to the polling place on election day, you had to surrender your ballot and we would give you a new one. And now you can vote that absentee ballot. So that's going to be a little bit different. Or you can surrender it. Let's say you say, I know I made a mistake. You can surrender it and get a new ballot. So you could always have done that before. Like, I know I made a mistake on this absentee ballot. I can surrender. Or the mail is not perfect. So you might not have got your ballot in the mail, or you might have got lost. the dog, we say the dog ate my homework. Well, the dog might have ate your ballot. You should see some of the ballots that we get back sometimes with coffee stains and spaghetti stains and various other things. So we work through to have a Republican and Democrat sit down together at the AV counting board and duplicate those ballots, because a spaghetti stained ballot is not going through one of our tabulators.
That's true.
So, but you can, so if you messed up the ballot, that's surrendering the ballot. So you surrender it, you get a new one. But now with these new laws, you can put it through a tabulator yourself.
Okay, perfect. And one more question before the end of our show, I believe. This question asks, the mayoral race is nonpartisan. Can you tell us why that is, and does that mean partisan politics won't seep into local elections like the mayoral race?
So we have a city charter. So every city gets to decide how their government's going to be formed. So the city of Grand Rapids has a manager, council form of government, and so we have a mayor who is the chair of the commission and votes just like a commissioner. So the mayor is elected citywide. The city of Lansing mayor is a strong mayor form of government and only votes as a veto. So every city charter is written different how we have, but our form of government is a manager. So the city manager runs the day-to-day operations of the city, and the mayor and the commission set the policies and do the approvals of everything that we do otherwise. And so that's how we have our government set up. So, and they set it up as a nonpartisan. Some cities have partisan races. We have 1,240 townships in the state of Michigan. They're all elected partisan, and it says they will have a supervisor, a clerk, a treasurer, and either 2 or 4 trustees. So but the home rule city allows cities to decide how they're going to form their government.
Perfect. And ours decided on nonpartisan.
And we decided to have 2 city commissioners per ward as well. Mm-hmm. And some places have 1 commissioner per ward and have multiple wards. So there's different ways to do it, but that's how Grand Rapids does it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking my questions and the viewers' questions. It has been very helpful getting us ready for a big election year where we will, I'm sure, be hearing about elections nonstop for the next year.
Right, and
so
michigan.gov/vote.
And there you go. One last push for it. Well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you to our guest again for coming and answering our questions. And thank you to all of you at home for tuning in and sending in your questions. See you next month.
The Grand Rapids Community Media Center is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment for all community members. It is a place where community voices are heard, valued, and lifted through media. We seek to provide area residents with a platform to participate in free speech, be engaged with the community, and share their diverse voices. As a multimedia platform organization, we provide and support a variety of community resources, including our radio station, WYCE 88.1 FM, our TV station, GRTV, our hyper-local news program, The Rapidian, web services, and our historic theater, Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is West Michigan's only community radio station that is listener-supported and volunteer-powered. WYCE uses local voices to help listeners discover and celebrate different services, cultures, and events. What I really like about programming music in WYCE is I get to not only interact with listeners and local musicians, but I get to put together a musical collage every week and give it away to the universe. As a volunteer programmer, you get the training on how to use equipment, how to access music from the library, and how to put together a great show that showcases local and national artists and still has your creativity included.
The Web Services Department helps West Michigan nonprofits connect, learn, create, and share through locally built and accessible websites. We help nonprofits strengthen their online presence by developing one-of-a-kind websites tailored to their specific needs. The Web Services team can take care of all the technical needs of getting a new site up and running, including website hosting, domain name registration, theme development, and page layout. Websites are built with accessibility and responsiveness in mind, making sure our projects are available on any screen and accessible to people of all abilities. We are passionate about helping organizations in the nonprofit sector effectively communicate their stories online, promoting equity and media access with our affordable services.
Wealthy Theater is a historic theater on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. It was built in 1911, and today it stands as a performing arts center, historic cinema, and community venue. We provide a space for community connection, where community members can get together, enjoy different shows and different events, from concerts to comedy, musicals, theater, film screenings, you name it. Anybody from the community can sign up to be a member and rent one of our spaces to host their event. We have a staff here at the theater that helps make all the events here happen, as well as a great community of volunteers. The goal is to bring the community together, bring audiences together, artists together, create experiences where those two can connect. Whether you're an audience member who wants to come see a show, or you're somebody who wants to put on a show, Wealthy Theater is a space for you.
The Rapidian is a hyper-local news source powered by, for, and of the people of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We launched in 2009 using funds from local organizations and generous donors, and this community-driven platform empowers residents to share their stories, post articles, and keep track of local events and issues. By emphasizing citizen journalism, the Rapidian provides a unique grassroots perspective and a vital news service for the residents of Grand Rapids. In 2023, we are relaunching the Rapidian with the Grand Rapids Documenters program, where we train and pay local citizens to cover public meetings, empowering residents with the tools and resources to strengthen the news media landscape in Grand Rapids and become more civically engaged.
GRTV airs public access television programming made by and for the Grand Rapids community, amplifying their voices to support a diverse and vibrant democracy. We provide the tools, training, and broadcast platform for free speech. Community members can take classes on video and production features, borrow professional equipment, editing software, and use of our studio facilities to create their own content. We help community members connect, learn, create, and share.